in chapter 2 of Matthew. The visit of the Magi and Herod's response. Sheer, unpretentious goodness on the one hand, grace and giving and selflessness and light and life and love are all around in the story of the birth of the Christ child. A gift laid at the world's door, and angels singing, and stargazers coming from the east, and a young girl with a baby boy. And then a little later, we're left with this, with wondering what has happened and what kind of person is involved in this experience. For the wise men who came, the stargazers came to see the great one, and Herod, the great one he's called, asked that he might go and see the Christ, and he thought he would trick them, and when that didn't work, he makes this horrible, horrendous, unthinkable kind of decision. Kill all the boys, age 2 and under, in Bethlehem. So not far away from where the most blessed thing that we can imagine took place, up in Jerusalem in the king's residence, an old man who embodied all that was in contrast, contrary, opposite for all of the goodness that we saw in Bethlehem. Every time he heard the term attributed to anyone, king, the alarm bell went on in his head. King Herod was an insecure man. He was called great rightly, for he was responsible for many wonders in his land. He was not Jewish completely. He was a half-breed, Edomian, but he practiced being a Jew, and for the support of the people. And it went over. It was a fraud, but he received many plaudits from the people. He built the temple. The temple of Jesus' time is the temple of Herod the Great, one of the great wonders of the world, along with the great harbor at Caesarea that he had rebuilt. It was one of the great wonders of the world. A crafty, cruel, crazy man. Crafty, cruel, and crazy. They all go together sometimes. He was so insecure that any time any word came that somebody might be born or rising or whatever, he would immediately go into a rage. He was, as I said, he practiced being a Jew, even though he was not a full-blooded one, and he observed the food laws of the Jews in a fastidious way. He would not eat pork, but Herod the Great had one of his sons killed. He wouldn't eat pork, but he had one of his sons killed. Somebody was prompted to say they'd rather be Herod's pig than his son. He was, Jesus would have been maybe not 2, but on up past infancy. We've established that. He wasn't a baby in nativity. He was somewhat older than that, because Herod the Great ordered that all of the children, all the boy children in Bethlehem, be 2 years and under. Of course, it didn't matter to him that might have been a few extra ones killed in the process, and that was just collateral damage. Is that what we call brown-skinned people who die below the border? Is that collateral damage? Didn't mean for this to happen, but that's just necessary as a part of trying to do good. And Herod would have thought the same thing about killing a few extra boys. It didn't matter one way or the other. Does it lessen the pain any that Mary's child escaped Herod's fury, and he was not slain? Warned of what Herod planned to do, Joseph took flight with the Holy Family to Egypt. And it is something to hold before us as we think of the innocent boys of Bethlehem. Innocent boys of Bethlehem. We can hardly imagine the horror of such slaughter. 2-year-old, not babies, but yeah, they were babies, snatched from mother's arms and put to the sword. Well, does the prophet say, Rachel wailed at the loss of her children. And now a powerful question, knotty question, you just inject in the middle of that. Where does such evil come from? Where does it start? Who started it? How did it begin? What's the meaning of evil in the first place? Is it forever? Does it exist for all time alongside good? That's the reason we put in juxtaposition these terms: black, light, good, evil, suffering, joy. Is it possible that we do not understand what real joy is, what real goodness is, unless we see it in juxtaposition besides what is evil? Do we not know what is good unless we see evil alongside it? And so is this God's way of showing us what is really good and what is really bad? Does God have to do it that way? And some will say that there's no way of experiencing goodness, love, joy, without the opposite: suffering, hatred, evil. Do you think so? We don't know the best unless we've seen the worst. Do you think? And so the innocent children of Bethlehem were slain, and the Holy Family takes flight to Egypt, and Jesus escapes. But that doesn't help the grieving mothers of Bethlehem. They can hardly rejoice in the escape of Jesus when their little boy was slain. I'm not suggesting that in any way that evens the score, or that balances the books in any way. That the child Jesus who escaped from Herod was later crucified. Does that even things up? Does the horrible death of Jesus make up for the fact that he escaped Herod's sword? By coalition of a religious government and religious power and government power of Rome, he died on the cross. But does that even things? We don't think so. He escaped, but it didn't change his destiny. He escaped Herod's sword, but it did not change his destiny. Nor did the cross remove the pain that the unthinkable agony of the children of Bethlehem. Cross, someone else suffering, did not remove their suffering. That did not come to mind. Whose child is slain mindlessly. There can be no greater horror that a parent can bring to mind than the horrible death of one of their children. And so, can anything express what they felt or what they endured? Can we put it into words that can tell us what they felt, what had befallen them? Then there's this. In the midst of this, I began to think about something. And let me, one more time, you may think that this is a rather whiplash movement, but let me bring to your mind one more time. I'm not saying it's the last time. I may do it yet again. Raise the question that Mark O'Connor raised, had the character de Laud in his masterwork, The Green Pastures. He had the Laud to raise with Angel Gabriel in that masterwork of his, surveying the scene before them of the death of their Lord Jesus on the cross. The Lord turned to Gabriel and asked, "Does that mean that God must suffer?" And Gabriel responds, "Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. God must suffer." And we're not sure whether we agree or not. I'm quite sure that O'Connor never heard of the great German theologian and of hope, who wrote greatly on hope, Jürgen Moltmann. I'm not sure he ever heard, well, he did hear of him. But I think he would have gotten Moltmann. I think he would have understood him. I think he would have gotten it. His statement about the God who suffers. I mentioned it to you the other day, I'm sure you remember it, that when the children rearranged my office and my study, and you know I've redone things out here and moved away and all of that, when they rearranged my study and study arrangement and the way I do things, they had brought things down from upstairs and put them in shelves, and a book surfaced that I'd forgotten about having, a book that Tom Stafford gave me. And Tom, I'm glad you walked in back there. A book that Tom gave me years ago by Jürgen Moltmann, entitled The Crucified God. And I began to reread the book. A gift that brought to mind about as profound a thought that the human mind can endure. The title says it. It's unspeakable, really, what the title suggests. You put it into words, but your mind cannot grasp it. The crucified God. The unspeakable. It's the unimaginable. It's sort of like the Jews, many of the Jews, the way they handled the Holocaust. You may have heard, I'm sure you have, they, rather than speaking of the Holocaust by name, they refer simply to Shoah, Shoah, the great shame that cannot be named, that which must not be even spoken. It is so horrible. The thing that many Jews resent Gentiles from even talking about, because they say this is our experience. But we are in that territory when we even give thought, even casual thought, to a book by such title as this, The Crucified God. Can you frame that in your imagination? Can you in any way think what that must mean? The crucified God? And yet it weaves its way in here, with the children of Bethlehem suffering, and their parents suffering, and the child Jesus escaping to Egypt. We're introduced to the cross. A friend of mine, a person I came to know a number of years ago, who worked as worked on grants at Arkansas State University. She became a pretty good friend, and we talked many times. And she, like so many other people, found the cross a scandal, horrible thing. And she talked of visiting a service in a Catholic church where the processional with the palms and all the rest was so lovely. And then she said, then they brought in this ghastly thing. What? The cross. And it is a ghastly thing on the face of it. It's the cruelest kind of death that you can imagine. It was a creation of the Roman government, Roman military, to put criminals to death by the cross. A horrible, unspeakable death it was. And as much as the pain and the discomfort and the agony of it physically was the spiritual, emotional agony of it, that this is a thing of shame. The Greeks called it foolishness. Foolishness. It was a stumbling block to the Jews, who said that it is a cursed thing, for cursed is everyone who dies on the tree. To the Romans, it's a thing simply of weakness and an object of revulsion. For on the cross, only the weak ones, the criminals, the rejected ones die. The ones who have no strength, they die. A loathsome thing reserved for the criminals and enemies of the state. The cross. It is a horrible thing, hardly to be spoken of. I don't think we've ever known quite how to handle it. We really haven't known quite how to handle the cross. I think some people handle it by trying to prettify it, dress it up in a way, sentimentalize it. But our attempt to do that alters and disfigures the cross. It is not to be prettified. It is not to be sentimentalized. It is a horrible thing. Some, many years ago, tried to change its character by wrapping roses around it. Roses around the cross. Doesn't quite fit. Moltmann says, this theologian of hope who wrote Crucified God, said Jesus was not crucified between two candles on an altar, but between two thieves on a place called Skull Hill. Good to remember. We may prettify it, we may try to rename it, we may try to change what it's surrounded with, but we do not change the fact that it is an awful and a terrible thing, the cross. We don't know quite what to do with it. He was crucified on a place called the Skull, because it's a place where the dead were taken and buried. Oh, what was it, really? The Skull place. Go back to Isaiah, the 53rd chapter of Isaiah, one of the great suffering servant poems. Isaiah may not have named him Jesus. He didn't call him by name. But he described what Jesus did, what happened to him in his great suffering servant poem. He described what happened to him. He called him, he was one that the heart does not desire. He is not comely. He is not attractive. We turn away from him. He's ugly. He's to be shunned. He's despised and rejected of men and acquainted with sorrows. We esteemed him not. We turned away from him. That's the way Isaiah discusses the servant on the cross. And then there's a seldom mentioned, and I can't take credit for this. I don't know of many people who have done so. Would you advertise the fact that Emil called attention to Hebrews 13? Because it is so graphic. There's a seldom noticed story. I'm not just joking about that. Others have noticed it, I'm quite sure. But it's a strange passage in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews 13, beginning in verse 10. Hebrews says that the high priest carries the blood of the animal outside the gate and pours the blood and throws the body out on the garbage heap, not to be countenanced inside the gate. This is something to be done outside the city, outside the camp. And then he speaks of Jesus. So Jesus was not crucified inside the camp. Jesus was crucified outside. Do you know what was outside? The garbage heap. The nasty part of it, the nasty pile. Do you know where it's near? It is near the valley of Hinnom. Do you know what Hinnom grows into? The valley of Gehenna. Do you know what happens to Gehenna? We've called it hell. Jesus was crucified in hell. The Apostles' Creed has it. Y'all been in church where they have the Apostles' Creed? He descended where?
Into hell.
Into hell. Could they have been referring to this? Jesus was crucified on the city garbage dump, where the fire never went out. You know where that term comes from? This is the garbage pile, where there's on fire and the fire never goes out. It's where he was crucified. No wonder it was a place of revulsion and a place to be rejected, and the one who died there was a criminal who was despised and turned away from. And it is the place where Jesus would have been buried, but for Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who took him and buried him in a new grave. But then the writer of Hebrews is not finished. He says, let us then go outside the camp with Jesus. We do not stay in the place that is quiet and safe. We are called to go outside with him, where he dies with the despised and rejected, where he dies with the scum of the earth, where he dies with the criminals. Crucifixion was for criminals. He died with them. And the writer of Hebrews says, then let us go outside the camp, where he is, where Jesus went. None of that removes the pain and the horror of the children of Bethlehem. Oh, and by the way, the disciples ran away from this. They didn't stay around. And I have a feeling that it was not just the horror and the fear of the cross, but that it was a thing of shame, which they wanted to avoid, and so they ran away. No, this doesn't remove the pain and the horror of the Bethlehem boys, not at all. But it does remind us that God is the God of suffering, that God is the God who suffers with us, that God is the God who suffers for us, that he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrow. Took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. And he was assigned a grave, so Isaiah says, he was assigned a grave with the wicked. And the author of Hebrews says, he invites us to go with him. We may sing about the old rugged cross, but I dare say we do not want to go with him. The writer of Hebrews invites us to go with him. Let us then go to him outside the camp, bearing the disgrace that he bore. That's exactly what Hebrews says. Let us go outside the gate and die with him and carry the disgrace that he bore. You have any idea what Hebrews is talking about? He's talking about the fact that the one who came and gave his life and died on the cross identified his life and his death and his resurrection. The ugliest, the meanest, the filthiest of this world. He died with the scum and for the scum. We avoid that. The writer of Hebrews says, let us go with him. I'll just close with this thought. Do we want fellowship with the Lord? We talk about that a lot. What a fellowship we have. Then I think we must go where he goes and where he is. With the rejected, with the oppressed, with the small, with the worthless, with the weak, and with the throwaways of this world, with the despised and the outcasts. That's where the baby boy who escaped Herod's sword finally spent the rest of his life and died. That's where he went. I just raised the question, do you want to go with him? Do you? Dear Father,